My name is Maya Rhodes. I'm 21 years old, and the loudest day of my life was also the quietest. Graduation day is supposed to sound like balloons squeaking against each other, relatives yelling your name wrong, and someone sobbing so hard their mascara winds up on their shoes. Mine sounded like an air conditioner humming over polite applause from strangers who didn't know me. Not because I forgot to invite anyone, not because the school messed up, because my parents had bowling. When I told my mom the ceremony was at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, she didn't even look up from her phone. Can't they change it? She asked. We've got league night. Your father already paid for the season. It's graduation, I said slowly. It's not a haircut. They don't reschedule it if it's inconvenient. My dad was bent over his bowling bag, lacing his shoes like he was in a Nike commercial for middle-aged knees. We've had that lane reservation since January, kiddo, he said. We can't ditch the team. They're counting on us. Apparently, Spare Me the Drama, their bowling team, mattered more than their only daughter walking across a stage in a plastic robe she ironed herself. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even argue. I just felt something inside me go, very still. Okay, I said, because that was the role I'd been given in this house, the reasonable one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't make a scene. That night, I ironed my own gown, taped the broken tassel back onto my cap with double-sided carpet tape, and practiced smiling in the mirror so I wouldn't look pathetic in photos I was taking by myself. At the ceremony, they mispronounced my last name. I walked anyway. The gym echoed with clapping, but it wasn't for me, just a general noise for the graduating class. When I stepped off stage, there was no cluster of family waving flowers, no handmade sign with my name, no mom shrieking like she was at a concert. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and took a selfie in the harsh fluorescent light. Cap slightly crooked, eyes a little tired, smile. Fine. Just fine. I texted it to the family group chat. Mom. Cute. We won 2 rounds tonight. Your dad bowled a turkey. No. We're proud of you. No. How did it feel? Just a bowling score and a bird emoji. You might think I cried. I didn't. The truth is, I'd been cashing out my disappointment account steadily since I was about 16. By 18, the balance was pretty low. My parents weren't monsters. They didn't lock me in closets or call me names. They just didn't see me, not unless there was a chore that needed doing or an appliance that needed fixing. They liked winners. Loud, sparkly, high-energy people who looked great in family photos and told stories at dinner. My younger cousin Tyler got a pizza party because he almost passed PE. I got a Post-it note stuck to a bottle of generic mouthwash once that said, "Nice job on math." That was my parade. I was the useful daughter, the one who reset the Wi-Fi, mowed the lawn without being asked, and got good grades no one remembered to ask about. So after graduation, when everyone else in my class posted photos of Bali, gap years, or finding themselves at music festivals, I put on an ill-fitting polo that said "Bite Me" and went to work. The shop was small, tucked between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. The owner, Raj, drank enough energy drinks to power a small city and wore Pokemon socks like they were part of a uniform. He liked me because I worked fast, didn't complain, and treated every phone and laptop like it mattered. "You're precise," he said once, watching me solder a tiny component onto a motherboard. "That's rare. Everyone wants shortcuts. You just fix it." Fixing things was easier than fixing people. The job paid minimum wage and sometimes bonus donuts when the bakery next door had leftovers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and I needed mine more than I needed fun. At night, after my shift, I'd go home, shut my bedroom door, and open my real project, spreadsheets. Tabs labeled things like 5-year escape plan and how to leave without a scene. Investment videos on one side of my screen, library books on finance on the other. My friends thought I was just bad at hanging out. I was actually building a life raft. Somewhere in all that, I started dating Ethan. Ethan wasn't flashy. He worked at an HVAC company, came home smelling like metal and dust, and had a laugh that made people turn and smile, even if they didn't know the joke. He showed up with burgers after my late shifts and listened to me rant about customers who thought rice in a phone was a miracle cure. He was also the only person who looked at my color-coded spreadsheets and didn't make a joke. "This is intense," he said, scrolling. "But it's smart. You're building something, May." May. No one had ever given me a soft nickname like that and made it sound like a compliment. One night, after another long shift and another silent dinner where my parents talked about their league standings and never once asked how my day was, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to leave emotionally, I was going to leave financially. Real estate came into my life because of a YouTube thumbnail. Some guy in a hoodie, no Lamborghini, no gold watch, just a simple title. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate, then wait. Most of those channels are scams wrapped in marble countertops, but this guy made sense. Slow, boring, focused on cash flow instead of flexing. I watched every video twice, took notes, ran numbers. By 19, with a stack of pay stubs, a chunk of savings from never going out, and sheer stubbornness, I walked into First United Bank with a folder labeled in Sharpie, Maya's Financial Escape Plan, Do Not Laugh. The loan officer, Elise, didn't laugh. She was in her late 30s, ex-teacher turned banker, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She flipped through my documents, nodded slowly, and said, I've seen grown men with businesses fail have worse planning than this. I almost cried in her office. Instead, I sat up straighter. So, do I have a chance? She smiled. We'll see what we can do. What we did was buy a foreclosed one-bedroom condo that smelled like sadness and old carpet cleaner. The balcony railing wobbled when you breathed near it. The neighbors seemed to argue professionally, but it was cheap, and it was mine. Well, technically the bank's, but symbolically, mine. Every evening after Bite Me closed, I'd pull on paint-stained jeans and head to the condo. YouTube tutorials and Spite taught me how to patch drywall, pull up warped floorboards, and install laminate without crying. More than once, Ethan crashed on a drop cloth beside me, dust in his hair, saying, This is going to look sick when it's done, May. 6 months later, it did. It wasn't luxury, but it was clean, solid, and bright. I rented it to a quiet woman named Nora who paid on time, watered the plant she gave me as a thank you, and called me Ms. Rhodes like I was a serious adult. Her rent funded the next place, and the next. By 20, I had 3 rentals, an LLC, and a life that didn't orbit around whether or not my parents felt like showing up. Then, one night, I came home from a double shift to find my parents at the kitchen table, laughing over cheap wine coolers, talking about a bowling tournament that might send them to Vegas. Oh, Maya, Mom said as I walked in. That lady from the bank called. Your little money friend. I froze. Elise? I don't know. I answered your phone while you were in the shower, she said, like violating my privacy was no big deal. She said something about a meeting or investment thing. I told her you were probably doing taxes or whatever. My stomach dropped. Elise wasn't a little money friend. She was the reason I had walls that belonged to me. I stepped into my room, shut the door, and called her back. She picked up on the first ring. Maya, glad you called. I've got something interesting. Elise explained there was an older couple looking to refinance their house. Bad credit, mounting debt, but decent equity. The bank could make it work if they had a private investor to partner with. It's a stretch, she said, but you're in a position now where this could be a good move for you. I don't know, I admitted. That sounds big. You're not the same girl who walked in here with a Sharpie folder, she said. You're more than ready. Who's the couple? I asked, just to picture the strangers I might be lending to. She read the names, crisp and clear over the line. James and Christine Rhodes. For a second, I thought the call glitched. Sorry, I said. Can you repeat that? James and Christine Rhodes, she said again. Ring any bells? I stared at my bedroom wall, at the faded bowling calendar Mom had tacked there 3 years ago and never updated. Yeah, they rang. My parents. The same people who skipped my graduation for league night. The same people who never asked where I went after work or why I came home smelling like sawdust. Elise cleared her throat gently. We can keep you anonymous if you'd prefer. You can sit behind the glass. The paperwork doesn't care whose face is attached to the signature. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. Not the invisible daughter, not the backup babysitter or built-in IT girl. I don't want to be anonymous, I said quietly. Schedule the meeting. Are you sure? She asked. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Yeah, if they need an investor, they should see exactly who they're asking. The meeting was set for Friday at 10 a.m. I woke up like it was exam day. Not the fun kind with scantrons and pencils, the life kind, where the test is whether you've actually changed or you're still the kid who backs down when someone says you're overreacting. I ironed my one decent button down, the light blue one Ethan says makes my eyes look dangerous. I even dug out a pair of black flats that weren't covered in paint splatters. As I stood in front of the mirror, I tied my hair back, then let it fall, then tied it again. It felt less like getting dressed and more like putting on armor. Ethan knocked on my doorframe, leaning there in his work pants, a thermos in one hand. "You look like you're about to argue with God," he said, half smiling. "Just my parents," I replied. "So, you're not far off." He stepped in, set the thermos on my dresser, and gently turned me to face him. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You can say no. Decline the deal, let the bank find someone else." "I know," I swallowed, "but I don't want to run my life around them anymore. I'm not avoiding them, Jim. I'm just doing business, on my terms." He studied my face, then nodded. "Then go be terrifying, and drink that on the way. It's coffee, not liquid courage." "You sure? A little liquid courage sounds nice." He laughed. "You don't need it, May. You've been planning this escape since before I met you. You just didn't know they'd walk right into it." He kissed my forehead. It grounded me in a way nothing else could have. For the first time, I walked out of that house not as their kid sneaking away, but as someone with somewhere more important to be. 15 minutes before 10, I stepped into the glass-walled conference room at First United. Elise was already there, laying out folders, and those little name tags that look ridiculous until you see your own title printed on one. She slid mine across the table with a little flourish. "Ms. Maya Rhodes, private investor, Quiet Future Holdings, LLC." Quiet Future. That's what I'd called my company because that's all I'd ever wanted. A future where no one yelled over me, talked around me, or forgot I was in the room. "You okay?" Elise asked, watching my face. "I'm fine," I said, "just enjoying the irony." "We can still arrange for you to be behind the glass," she offered. "We do it all the time. The borrowers never have to know who's on the other side." I shook my head. "No, if they want help, they can look me in the eye when they ask." She smiled, small and sharp. "All right then, let's do it properly." She left to grab something from the printer. I sat down at the far end of the long mahogany table and placed my folder in front of me. Hands flat, shoulders back, heart surprisingly calm. At 10:03, I heard the clacking of my mom's sandals in the hallway, my dad's low voice complaining about parking. "We found it," he was saying. "Told you it was the third floor, not—" They stepped into the conference room and stopped dead. For a second, no one breathed. My mom blinked, like she'd walked into the wrong movie. My dad's face went through 3 expressions in 1 second: confusion, irritation, disbelief, before landing on a scowl. "Maya," Mom said, voice lifting at the end, like my presence here was a question. "What are you doing here?" I looked up slowly. "Good morning." Dad narrowed his eyes. "If this is some kind of joke, we don't have time. We have an appointment with—" "Ms. Rhodes?" Elise's voice floated in as she re-entered, professional tone crisp. "Ah, good. You're all here." She moved around them smoothly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "James, Christine," she said, nodding to my dad, then my mom. "Allow me to formally introduce you to Ms. Rhodes. She'll be your prospective private investor for this refinance." The silence was thick enough to chew. "My what?" Mom laughed, except it didn't sound happy. "Wait, that's ridiculous. She's our daughter." "I am," I agreed calmly, "and I'm also the managing director of Quiet Future Holdings. That's the LLC Elise mentioned." Dad turned to Elise, voice climbing. "This is some kind of prank. We came here for real help, not to be humiliated." Elise didn't flinch. "There's nothing humorous about this situation, Mr. Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes meets all our criteria for a private lending partnership. She has substantial equity, stable rental income, and a proven payment history. From the bank's perspective, she's exactly the kind of partner we want on this file." Their eyes finally swung back to me like I'd become dangerous without warning. I gestured to the chairs. "You can sit, or you can leave, but the clock on this time slot is running either way." It was like someone unplugged their spines. They sat. Elise began walking through the basics. Income, outstanding debts, plummeting credit score. It was the clinical language of money. But in my parents' faces, I saw something else. The slow realization that all those little problems they'd brushed aside had turned into a wall they couldn't bowl their way through. "So, as you can see," Elise concluded, "your existing mortgage and recent missed payments make traditional refinancing difficult. With a private investor backing the loan, however, we can structure a new agreement that consolidates your debts and stabilizes your monthly payment." Mom cleared her throat, eyes never leaving my face. "And how much power does this private investor have over our arrangement?" "All of it," I answered before Elise could. "I approve the terms, or I don't. I can add conditions or walk away. Mom's lips pressed together. Dad's jaw flexed. When, Mom began, did you get into this investing thing? A while ago, I said lightly. Bought my first property 9 months after graduation. She paled. The graduation The one you missed for league night? I finished for her, keeping my tone neutral. Yeah, that one. Her eyes filled with something like shame, but her voice came out defensive. We didn't know it mattered that much. You knew, I said quietly. You just had other priorities. The words landed like a stone tossed into a shallow pool. Small splash, big ripples. Elise shifted papers gently. If we could bring the focus back to the terms. Fine, Dad said gruffly. Let's talk terms. He folded his arms, trying to reclaim some authority, the same posture he used when he told me no to summer camps or trips because money doesn't grow on trees. Funny how money suddenly grows on daughters when you need it. I flipped through the proposal Elise had prepared, the neat rows of numbers I'd already memorized. I let the silence stretch, not as a game, but because I wanted them to feel the weight of every second they'd never given me. Here's the situation, I said. You want to refinance to pay off debts and fix the house. Your credit is shredded, you've got missed payments on your record, and you've taken on more projects than your income can handle. The bank is willing to consider this because I'm willing to put my money behind you. Without me, this meeting wouldn't be happening. Dad bristled. We worked our whole lives. We just hit a rough patch. Rough patches don't typically include ignoring multiple notices from the gym, the roofing company, and the credit card company, I replied, tapping the file. You didn't just stumble into this. You rolled toward it, one ignored bill at a time. Mom flinched. You sound just like those people online you watch. So cold. So transactional. We're your parents, Maya. I smiled, but there wasn't much warmth in it. Right now, you're borrowers. I'm an investor. That's the relationship you asked for when you walked in here. They looked offended, like I had rewritten history in front of them. But I hadn't. For years, when they needed something tech-related, I was a walking IT department. When they wanted the lawn done, the house cleaned, rides given, I was labor. When they needed someone to cheer for, I was invisible. Now, for the first time, I was the one setting terms. I'm willing to do this, I said, but it won't be a favor. It'll be business, which means interest, penalties, boundaries. Boundaries? Mom spat the word like it was vulgar. You're punishing us because we missed one event. I laughed under my breath. No, Mom. I'm responding to a lifetime of being the optional child. The one you cropped out of photos because I was standing in bad light. The one who fixed your broken vacuum while Tyler got trophies for participation. Dad's face went red. We gave you a home, food, clothes. You act like you raised yourself. I met his eyes steadily. You gave me somewhere to sleep. I gave myself everything else that matters. Elise glanced between us, expression carefully blank, then cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss the specific rate, Ms. Rhodes. Yes, I said, reaching for a pen. I wrote a number on the margin of the proposal, 9.7%. Circled it, slid the paper across the table. Dad stared like I'd slapped him. You can't be serious. It's under 10, I said calmly. And given your history, it's generous. Generous, Mom repeated, outraged. We're your family. I nodded. And that's the only reason the first digit isn't a 1. For a second, I thought Dad might actually stand up and walk out. His chair scraped, his hands curled into fists on the table. If this is about revenge, he started. It's not, I cut in. If I wanted revenge, I'd say no and watch you try to explain your situation to a credit union that doesn't care you once had a perfect attendance trophy in league night. He glared. Then what is this? This is me valuing my money and my peace more than your comfort, I said. This is me not pretending we're a happy, close family while you quietly feel entitled to what I've built. Mom's eyes filled, lashes clumping with mascara. We always loved you. In the same way someone loves a garden hose, I replied, my voice softer than I felt. Useful, convenient, kept outside until they need it. The words hung in the air. Even Elise's pen stopped moving. I took a breath, forced my shoulders to relax. Look, here's the deal. You sign this. You agree to the rate and the penalties. You pay on time, every time. You make your mortgage more important than bowling, holidays, patio extensions, or whatever else you think will impress relatives I've never met. You don't guilt-trip me, you don't play the victim, and you don't pretend this is charity. And if we don't sign, Dad challenged, then you go somewhere else, I said simply. Try your luck with a bank that doesn't know you skipped your daughter's graduation for glow-in-the-dark lanes. He flinched like I'd hit him. Good. Someone finally had. Elise slid the documents closer to them. You're welcome to take these home to review, she said in her neutral, professional voice. Discuss them, consult another advisor, whatever you need. But the offer is valid as written for 10 business days. After that, Ms. Rhodes is under no obligation to back this loan. Mom stared at the pen in front of her like it might explode. You're really going to do this? She whispered to me. Charge us like strangers? I held her gaze. I'm going to treat you exactly how you treated me. Cordial, distant, and very aware of where our relationship ends. Dad looked at the papers, then at me. There was anger there, yes, but something else too. Fear. The dawning realization that for the first time he couldn't just lecture his way out of the consequences. I'm not asking you to like this, I said quietly. I'm telling you this is what it costs. I stood, gathering my own folder. You can leave the signed copy with Elise if you decide to go through with it. I have another meeting. Mom swallowed. With who? Contractor, I said, for the duplex I'm renovating. I nodded to Elise, then walked to the glass door. My reflection stared back at me. Buttoned down, steady eyes, shoulders squared. Not the invisible daughter, the investor. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving them on the other side of the glass, staring at the terms. 3 days passed. 3 long, echoing, strangely quiet days. No texts, no door slams, no dramatic voicemails from my mother asking, "How could you embarrass us like that?" Just silence, which should have felt peaceful, but instead it felt like standing in a hallway after a storm. Everything still, too still, like the world was holding its breath. On the 4th morning, I was half asleep on the couch in my small office above the repair shop, my unofficial headquarters for Quiet Future Holdings, when someone knocked. I jolted upright. Nobody knocked here. Elise stepped in, holding a large envelope as if it were a newborn she wasn't sure she wanted to touch. You will not believe who dropped this off, she said, closing the door behind her. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They sent Tyler to do it? Nope, your father, Elise smirked. He didn't ask to see you, just thrust it at me like it was radioactive and said, "Give this to her," then left. Yep, that sounded exactly like them. She placed the envelope on my desk. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside were the signed contracts. Every page initialed, every term accepted. Even the 9.7% interest rate circled in my father's irritated handwriting. But the part that caught me wasn't the signatures. It was the post-it note, square, yellow, written in my mom's all-caps handwriting, the same way she labeled leftovers. We don't have to like this, but we're not stupid. That was it. Not, we're proud of you. Not, we didn't realize how much we hurt you. Not even a reluctant thank you. Just the emotional equivalent of a shrug tossed into an envelope. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You good? Elise asked gently. I folded the contracts, slid them back into the envelope, and nodded. Better than I thought I'd be. So do we lock it in? She asked. Yeah, I said. They're officially ours. She smiled at the phrasing. Ours? As in, Quiet Future Holdings? I nodded. They're my clients now. Or tenants of my money, I guess. Elise raised a brow. Why Quiet Future? I've always wanted to ask. I sat back in my chair, eyes drifting to the window, because that's all I ever wanted from them. She waited. A future where I could breathe without feeling like I'm auditioning for affection. I shrugged lightly. Quiet. Controlled. Mine. Elise let out a soft laugh. You're colder than you look, Ms. Rhodes. Not cold, I said. Just done. That night, after a long day balancing tenants, emails, and a cracked iPad screen repair for Bite Me, I went to the duplex I was renovating. The air smelled like fresh plywood and dust. Tools were scattered across the floor. Laminate planks leaned against the wall like an audience waiting for instructions. I sat in the middle of the floor, stretched out my legs, and let my head fall back. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, local area code. I hesitated, then pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. Hey, Maya, you probably got the paperwork by now. We, signed. He paused. It was the longest pause I'd ever heard in his voice. We didn't mean to drop it off like that. Your mother just, well, we didn't want to make a scene. Another pause, this one heavier. I wanted to say thanks, he said, quieter. Even if this feels weird. You didn't have to help us. And I know we didn't exactly make things easy for you. He cleared his throat. You've done well. Really well. We didn't see it coming. Guess that's on us. Click. The voicemail ended. I stared at my phone. I should have been relieved, or angry, or emotional. But instead, I just felt clarity, like someone had cleaned the window in my mind and I could finally see through it. This was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get, from my father especially. And maybe, for who he is, this was as good as it gets. I didn't delete it. I didn't save it as precious either. It was just information, data, a final puzzle piece of understanding. The next morning I called Elise. "Let's finalize the mortgage transfer paperwork," I said. "You still want it listed under the LLC name?" she asked. "They'll see it on every document." "I know." A slow smile spread across my face. "That's the point." 2 days later, the first monthly statement went out. At the top, bold and undeniable, Quiet Future Holdings, LLC. Managing Director, Maya Rhodes. I didn't send a welcome basket. I didn't send a card. I did briefly consider mailing them a gold-wrapped bowling pin. Symbolic closure. But I didn't need to. They already knew who owned the lane now. A week passed. No calls, no texts, no Facebook posts about family first. I'd prepared myself for guilt tripping. Accusations, tears, maybe even manipulation dressed up as nostalgia. But what I got instead was an unexpected message from someone I hadn't thought about in months. Jenna, Ethan's ex. She wasn't cruel, just everything I wasn't. Loud, glittery, performed confidence like she majored in it. She had once called me practical, which coming from her sounded like an insult. Her text popped up while I was eating dinner with Ethan. "Saw your parents stopped coming to league night. Everything okay? Heard you're involved?" Sounds messy. Ethan always said you were kind of cold when it came to people. My fork froze. Cold. Transactional. The same words my mom used in the meeting. Ethan leaned over. "You okay?" I showed him the message. He read it, scoffed, and locked my phone. "May, she's projecting. She always hated that you never cared about her little attention games." But the funny thing was, it didn't sting. Because in that moment, something clicked. People who aren't used to boundaries will always call you cold when you finally draw a line. I wasn't cold, I was finally warm to myself. 2 weeks later, the first mortgage payment came through. Fully. On time. Not a cent short. And with it, a single text from my mother. "Payment sent. Hope that makes you happy." No emoji, no warmth, just sandpaper. I stared at it, waiting for the familiar squeeze in my chest. The guilt, the desire to smooth things over, the instinct to earn love. But nothing twisted this time. Instead, I closed the message and opened my calendar. I had a flooring supplier meeting in 30 minutes. Their feelings were no longer the center of my world. My future was. 2 months after the loan went active, life took on a strangely steady rhythm. Every 30 days, like clockwork, a payment from my parents landed in the Quiet Future Holdings account. No notes, no emojis, no guilt bombs, just numbers, and numbers don't lie. Elise emailed me after the third payment cleared. Subject, third payment, body. Consistent so far. Fear is a surprisingly reliable budgeting tool. I snorted. She wasn't wrong. But something else was happening too, something unexpected. My world was expanding. I wasn't just the girl who fixed cracked screens and learned real estate on YouTube at 2 a.m. People were starting to notice what I built. Which is how I ended up at a private networking lunch Elise convinced me to attend. The restaurant looked like it only served foods that came in geometric shapes. White tablecloths, pressed collars, business cards so thick they could stop a bullet. I almost turned around. But Elise spotted me and waved me over. "Come on, Maya. You belong here. Sit." I took a seat. My name tag read, Maya Rhodes, Quiet Future Holdings, local investor. Across from me, a silver-haired man squinted at the tag. "Quiet Future Holdings?" he read aloud. "Don't think I've heard of that." I smiled, polite but firm. "You have now." The man beside him leaned forward. "What's your niche?" "Trades First Rentals," I said without missing a beat. "Properties in rough shape that I can fix with my own hands. Keep rents fair. Show up when tenants call. No slumlord nonsense." A couple of eyebrows raised. The man chuckled. "So, a community landlord?" "I prefer," I said, "local investor with a wrench." Laughter rippled around the table, not mocking this time, impressed. And suddenly I realized something. I wasn't an outsider anymore. I wasn't the invisible girl trying to earn a seat at someone else's table. I was exactly what this room didn't know it needed. After lunch, I drove past my old neighborhood. Not for the drama, just curiosity. Closure and neutral packaging. The house looked the same. Peeling paint, overgrown hedges, the same gnome by the mailbox that had been leaning sideways since I was 9. But I didn't feel the usual pinch in my chest. Didn't feel small. It didn't loom over me like some monument to everything I lacked. It just looked like a house I used to rent space in emotionally. Then I saw it. The mailbox. A glossy new sticker, printed by Elise just as I requested, placed under the rusted flag. Quiet Future Holdings, LLC. Managed by appointment only. I let out a breath and laughed. Not cruelly, not triumphantly, just freely. The kind of laugh you make when you finally understand the joke life's been telling you for years. Later that week, my cousin Tyler texted me out of nowhere. Yo, your parents quit the bowling league, said, it's not financially smart anymore, LMAO. I snorted. So the mighty had fallen. League night, my parents' sacred ritual, was gone, not because I asked them to give it up, but because prioritizing actual bills meant they couldn't afford the thing they once chose over me. That's not funny, I told myself, except it kind of was. Not in a vindictive way, in a poetic way. Sometimes life rearranges the scoreboard for you. A few days later, after checking on a property near the trade school, I found myself driving past the old bowling alley. On impulse, I pulled into the empty parking lot. Lights off, sign dangling, doors chained. A giant for lease banner rippled in the wind. For a moment, I just sat there in my car, staring at the building that had been the centerpiece of my parents' universe. They missed birthdays for this place, anniversaries, my graduation, and now it was dark, empty, abandoned. I felt nothing sharp, nothing bitter, just clarity. It was never about bowling. It was about escape, about identity, about choosing the world where they felt appreciated. And now I was the one they paid rent to. Life is funny that way. Back at my office, Elise greeted me with a folder. Third payment processed, she said. No hiccups. I nodded. Good. Send the invoice for next month. Oh, and by the way, she added, eyes twinkling, I updated the footer like you asked. My smile widened. Perfect. Because now, every single month, my parents would receive a digital statement with 3 simple lines at the bottom. Mortgage managed by Quiet Future Holdings, owned by the daughter you skipped graduation for. Not angry, not spiteful, just factual. A footnote of truth in the ledger of our relationship. 2 months later, an email came in from one of the investors at the networking lunch. Subject, Joint Venture Proposal. Trade District Project Giri Amadi. We'd like to partner with you on a series of duplexes near the trade school. You'd be the face of the project. Your model aligns with what the community needs. Community trusted. Ground built. Let's talk. I stared at the email for a long time. They wanted me to be the face. Not because of my family name, not because of connections, because of my work, because of who I'd become. That afternoon, I got a phone call. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then my mother's voice, small, careful, almost human. Maya, the payment went through. Just wanted to let you know. I waited. She added stiffly, we're doing our part. Another pause, then the real confession. And I saw your name on the statement. That was surprising. I let the quiet stretch, not to be cruel, just to let the truth settle. Surprising is better than disappointing, I said softly. She exhaled. That's all, bye. Click. No, I love you. No, we're proud. No excuses. And yet, no denial anymore either. Just reality. For once, that was enough. That night, I sat on the balcony of my tiny apartment, the first space that ever truly belonged to me, and opened a fresh page in my notebook. At the top, I wrote 3 words. What comes next? Because the story wasn't about them anymore. It was about everything I was building, quietly, steadily, on foundations they never bothered to ask about. My parents weren't villains, not heroes, just people who made choices. And now I was making mine. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. A quiet future is still a future, and it's finally mine.